Welcome to the Soulbody Wholeness Podcast.
Each episode is a living, breathing transmission. Together, we will explore deep, nuanced, and controversial topics of the soul. Welcome to your community of sensitive seekers and deep feelers.
Welcome back, Goldsbrand.
Hello, and welcome to the very first episode ever of the Soulbody Wholeness Podcast. My name is Joshua, and I'm so happy that you're here with me in this origin story moment. So I don't want to speak too much in this episode. I'm very excited to get the ball rolling on future episodes, but I hope this can serve as a bit of an introductory episode as to my vision with this podcast and a little bit about who I am and my origin story and why I'm doing this. So before we begin, I invite you to just take a moment to come into presence. I will be doing this quite often in my podcasts, as I see my podcast as an opportunity to do something different from our normal day-to-day life. So just taking a moment and wherever you're at, just noticing your breath. Maybe we can all take one collective breath together. And just coming into this moment, collecting your attention, your awareness, and bringing it into your immediate space, into your listening capacities, your listening faculties. Just feeling yourself, feeling the energy that we're actually sharing in this space. This is a really beautiful co-creation. It's not just me sharing knowledge and you consuming. It's really more about the relationship, the community, the co-created energy. I literally can't do this without being somehow connected and even quantumly entangled with you as the listener, as the viewer. So just beginning with that feels like a beautiful foundation for the rest of the episode. And yeah, I'd like to begin by sharing a little bit about my backstory. Where to even begin? So I grew up in America. I grew up in a very normal family, pretty mainstream way of living, mainstream modern culture. And I had a very bright light. I was a very energetic, ecstatic little boy. But I also had a lot of deep sensitivities, which caused a lot of challenges for me. And I often felt very out of place and like I had no center, no core of who I was. So I was constantly, as most young people do, trying on many different masks and never feeling quite at home unless I was alone and watching TV and getting lost in the fantasies of my mind of what my dream life could be like fantasizing about being the most popular kid in school or having a girlfriend, or just lost in fantasies that weren't reality. And I often made those fantasies, or I tried to make those fantasies into my reality. I would share those stories as if they were my own stories. So I was essentially lying, fabricating a lot of my reality, and also felt this subtle fear that I was always going to get caught. So I dealt with tons of social anxiety, and I was very sensitive to noise and energy and emotions and confrontation. My essential purpose was to be liked by everyone, to be the most popular, to be the best, So I really strived to do all of that. And I actually think I didn't do the best job. But fast forwarding to young adulthood, I dropped out of college after one semester of partying. I got involved in a deeply toxic, trauma bond laden relationship and eventually married this person and worked a job that was so out of alignment for all of my sensitivities. Um, I went into a really dark place. I experienced a lot of mental health stuff as a teenager, a lot of depression, suicidal tendencies, and lots of anxiety. But this relationship and this job really drove me into the depths of my darkness. It was one of the darkest times of my life. And coming out of that relationship felt like a huge pivotal threshold moment in my life where I felt I had three main choices. One being to kill myself. I honestly contemplated that. The second being to continue living in this sort of hermited way where I avoided anything that I might be interested in trying for fear of failure and for fear of looking like a failure to others. Just living in that anxiety and allowing it to completely drive my life. Or the third option would be to actually start trying things, even though I was afraid. And thank God I chose that option. And that decision snowballed and created a lot of positive momentum in me discovering some things about my authentic personality for the first time in my life, like feeling a genuine passion for working out and eating healthier and gaining some friends that have shared and similar interests and values. Now, I thought I had solved all my problems through this route and went deep into the personal training and nutrition realms. Sadly, that, or at least at the time, it felt sadly that I found that my emotional and existential problems would come back. And so I started researching and diving into different types of personal development and self-help. Also doubling down on the fitness and nutrition instead of looking into the deeper emotional root problems of what I was being challenged with. And eventually I realized that I couldn't live in my hometown anymore. That's where I was living. And I realized I wasn't surrounded by anyone who was going to support my blossoming and my exploration and my curiosities. So I, for the first time, felt like I heeded this call from my soul to move out of my hometown, to move to North Carolina, to a little hippie town called Asheville. And it was the first time I felt this fundamental trust in the call in the universe. And it was very challenging to sell all my things. I had bought a house, to sell my house, and to just pack up my life and fit what I could in my Prius and move to Asheville without much of a plan. The 6 years that followed that decision were some of the most beautiful, growth filled, spiritually filled, what I call middle world work filled phases of my life, where I really deepened in the qualities of community. I really learned how to connect to the earth. I really learned and was initiated into compassionate communication and, just being with others and deep soul friendships. And yeah, it really initiated me into more of my social capacities. And at the time, I was going deeper and deeper into personal training and nutrition coaching. And what I was finding was that I was very drawn to more holistic ways of working with people. And what I was finding was that people were having a lot of problems with emotions and their nervous system, just feeling okay day to day, just feeling really fatigued and strung out by life. I was attracting other sensitive people, and I found that they were struggling with the exact same things that I was struggling with. I hadn't figured out anything. I was trying to support them while also feeling pretty chronically dysregulated. And I didn't quite realize the extent of it at the time, but was having a lot of chronic sleep issues. And I entered one of the most powerful soul-based relationships, romantic relationships, over the course of almost 4 years. This relationship went on, and a little after the 4 years. And that was maybe one of my deepest initiations into the depths of who I am and my soul and my soul's values. And as this relationship came to an end, my life started dissolving and coming to an end. All of these identities that I had gained over the 6 years of being in Asheville were starting to dissolve. And my roles in my communities were beginning to dissolve. And I moved homes, and I was finding that I was really struggling to show up for my clients in the personal training realms, that it wasn't feeling true and in my essence to even be doing this work. I had for the past couple years been called to deepen in the emotional and the spiritual and the shamanic realms, but didn't feel like I was worthy or valuable or had enough to be able to contribute to those realms. I didn't really see myself in those realms, but I would see others in those realms and be really lit up and inspired, and also super jealous and insecure. And so as my life was unfurling and unraveling and dissolving, it was really uncomfortable. I was going through a deep crisis, a deep existential crisis. My shadow was showing up in so many disturbing ways, and in ways that I thought I had healed and was done with for a very long time. And so, again, I listened to the calling of my soul. I went to Costa Rica for a 3-week solo trip and very quickly realized that I could not continue living my life. There had to be a drastic change. I was given this vision, this message that when I went back home, I needed to sell almost all of my things, and I needed to leave. I needed to become nomadic. I needed to wander. I needed to leave my business behind. And so this was exhilarating, but also terrifying. And when I got back home, it was even more terrifying. I realized that I had a lot of work to do. um, I was chronically fatigued. I was chronically dysregulated. I was chronically in the state of fear, as I was about to enter this big portal of the unknown. And I eventually did it. And yeah, those first 9 months were some of the most challenging times of my life. I was really unraveling and disintegrating and pulling out all of my hooks and energetic threads that I had in Asheville, like really questioning myself, like, why did I do this? And having to face all of these mountains of grief that I had been avoiding with the relationship and just where I was in my life. I wasn't happy with where I was in my life, and just this deep, deep longing to know who I am and what my purpose is, like what is my service for the world, and feeling like I was so uninitiated. I was so disconnected from any rite of passage that was going to help me see what I'm here to do. And, looking back, obviously I was going through that rite of passage. I was going through that initiation. And the first part was just so incredibly uncomfortable. And just fast forwarding, several months later, those travels putting me face to face with some of the most potent and powerful mirrors and experiences and transformational programs. One of them being a program I went through with the Purpose Guides Institute, which the whole purpose was to put you face to face with your soul, with your soul's medicine, with your soul's purpose. And through almost a decade of personal growth and development work and spirituality, I had never found anything that had spoke to me on such a deep level, and which had fundamentally shifted my center of gravity and connected all the dots of my journey and helped me realize that everything that I had been walking through was actually walking towards that moment, that deep coming home to my soul and that recognition of my medicine. And so for the next several years after that, it's been a deep crystallization of that medicine. I trained with the Purpose Guides Institute to become a purpose guide. The right training started to show up instead of me having to kind of figure out and guess. They just came together. It all aligned. It all revealed. And I knew how, from going through this program, I knew how to really listen to my soul at even a more subtle and deep level. I learned how to trust my soul. I developed healthy, secure attachment style with my soul. And so my life ever since has been this crystallization of all of those visions I received from my soul, really crystallizing what it is I'm here to do, the visions, like bridging it to the earth realm, to the 3D reality. The right teachers have been showing up. The right relationships have been showing up. Everything has been this distillation process. It's just been distilling and distilling, clearing away more and more and more of the distractions, of the noise, of all of the themes and the identities and the relationships that are not me, that are not in alignment with the purpose of my soul. And one of the crystallized projects that have come through is this knowing that I'm supposed to bridge, I am supposed to bring forth this podcast as this bridge to bring my soul medicine into the world, to enact my sacred voice, to connect my voice to my heart. This is a big throat chakra experiment. And so that's what I'm here to do. I have been seeing with more and more clarity where we are going as a culture, as a society. We are relying more and more on technology, including this boom of AI, in a continued over-reliance upon the technology in a way that's creating more and more disconnection, in a way that's creating more and more inauthenticity. And so I don't think we need to get rid of the technology. I think we're being initiated in how to be in right relationship with it. Like what I'm doing right now is amazing, that I'm able to reach so many voices, so many eyes. But what I'm intending to do with this is give a voice to my authenticity and any guests that I bring on, to create a platform of authenticity, to give people a real moment, with themselves, with each other, with me. We are drowning in a sea of inauthenticity. We're drowning in a sea of so many layers of noise and distraction and strategy that is intended to hook you, manipulate your attention, and to leave you dysregulated, so that it can keep doing that over and over, so that you are not empowered to make a choice with what might be the most sacred form of currency that you have, which is your attention. So there's a real harvesting of attention happening right now at more and more complex levels. And as a society descends into more and more chaos, more and more destruction is going to ensue. And as a result, what's left is going to be burning very bright. It's going to be very obvious to see what's authentic, what's true. And to me, I'll say, what is God? What is the divine? We see the light of God. We're able to recognize it more clearly when we're in the darkness. And we're in some dark times right now. So if you're here, I hope that you can recognize that this is a source of light. And maybe if you've been in a lot of darkness, you'll be able to really recognize like how bright it is, how bright this can be. And so this podcast is not intended or designed to be like what is in the status quo. I'm not learning about podcasts online through templates that have worked, through strategies that have found success. I don't want to support this provoking of mental stimulation, of distraction. I don't want people listening to this podcast in the background as they're working on their own work, as they're working on homework. I mean, driving's one thing, or cooking is another thing, but this is intended to be really present with. This isn't something you're just listening to with your mind. It's one to be felt in your body. It's one to be felt in your imagination. It's one to be really received with your heart and your emotions. And so it's going to have moments of spaciousness. It's going to have moments of stillness. It's going to sound raw at times. I think there's a beautiful relationship that we can be in with this technology where we can amplify what it is that I'm sharing. We can beautify it. We can really create a lot of beauty with the aesthetics, but the heart is what's important. It's the essence. And so the essence really is the heart, is the authenticity. It is this oasis for this world of overstimulation, of distraction, of noise. I hope that people will be able to leave with an embodied new perspective, not just another perspective to think about, but like actually feeling new possibilities in their own being, to feel a sense of regulation in your nervous system as you listen to this instead of fear, like feeling a lot of hope. It's like coming into a temple space and sharing a cup of tea or a meditation, just this feeling of home, this feeling of community, this sanctuary of nourishment. And so this podcast is really for the ones who are ready to come home to themselves, to come home to their body, and to come home to the divine pulse that animates all of life. And so just to give a brief outline of what I think will be the journey arc for my seasons. This first season, I'm wanting to do 7 episodes, one being this opening, and then just a different style and theme of a structure that's going to facilitate authenticity. It's going to facilitate depth and creativity and spontaneity and being in the moment. It's not just going to be me having guests on in a way that just talks about something that they're knowledgeable about. You know, when I have guests, of course, I want some of their expertise and their mastery, but I want to draw them into the moment and have them speak maybe even vulnerably about something, and it being really a conversation between two souls versus some type of opportunity to teach something. And I will have episodes where there's teaching because I do feel like I've studied in some realms that can really support people in opening up to new perspectives. But there's also going to be times where it'll just be we meditate on a koan and we talk about that. I might have a guest on and we just see what is birthed from our creative morning pages of that day and just be with what it is and allow it to be an authentic exploration. And there will also be podcasts that are meditations that are focused on bridging the spirit, bridging the soul into the body and into this world. Like how to make this tangible, how to make this actionable. We can't just stay in these upper world dimensions of spirit. We're being called, maybe now more than ever, to bridge spirit with matter. And so that's a little taste of what's to come. I appreciate your ears and your heart if you're still with me at this point in the episode. And so maybe we can close it out with just a little moment of presence with ourselves, taking a nice breath in together. Thank you for listening, and I am so excited for this journey that we're about to take together. Bye for now.
Thank you for joining me on the Soulbody Wholeness Podcast. If you like this episode, you can support the journey by rating and subscribing wherever you listen. I invite you to follow me on Instagram at Soulbody Wholeness for more insights and to stay up to date with my current offerings. And if you feel called to work with me directly, I invite you to visit my website at www.soulbodywholeness.life. I offer somatic alchemy sessions and soul purpose initiation journeys that awaken your inner healer, reconnect you to your innate wholeness, and ignite your soul's deepest purpose. I invite you to carry this resonance with you as you move throughout your day and return anytime you need a reminder of your courage, your wholeness, and your light. Blessings, old friend.